Thanks for joining me, Freddie Coleman, on Freddie and Fitzsimmons on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. Don't forget to tell your smart speaker to play ESPN Radio. So many people have always talked about what kind of effect fans will have on an event. It could be positive, it could be negative. But we're starting to hear about sports that may come back, whether it's the NBA, the NHL, or sports starting when it comes to the NFL or college football with no fans in the stands. Well, Glenn Cummins is a professional at Texas Tech who has studied the effect of crowd noise on sports viewing extensively. He also argued that when we watch sports on TV, we take our social cues from the fans in the stadium. Can't wait to elaborate more on this as Glenn Cummins joins me here on Freddie and Fitzsimmons on ESPN Radio. Glenn, I don't know how long you were able to do this survey. Number one, I completely understand and agree with it. Number two, when you watch sports on TV, how much of the fact that you wish you were there adds to that kind of effect that you're getting from watching a sport on TV?
You know, I don't know if it's so much that you wish you were there, but it's really such an integral part of watching is hearing that in the background, right? It's something that it's always there, and we just take it for granted, right? So when all of a sudden that's taken away from the broadcast, then, I mean, it's a spooky experience, right? So even if we're not concentrating, right, we're with our friends, with our buddies, we might be having a beer, whatever the case may be, that noise is always going to be present. And so it's just such a pervasive part of what we're hearing that, whether or not it makes us feel like we're actually there, it's just something that, it's part of watching sports, right?
Yeah, no doubt about that. We always hear about home court advantage or teams playing well on the road and doing well on the road, that crowd noise. What does that crowd noise really do for the athletes out there playing, no matter if they're playing for the fans or playing against the fans?
People have talked about this, and people have asked the actual athlete, saying when we talk about momentum and when we talk about momentum shifting in a game, I mean, the crowd noise is so much a part of that. And athletes, will tell you and have been interviewed and done some surveys where they say absolutely that's part of it. And not just the athletes. I mean, there's been some research just looked at how the crowd noise impacts refereeing and refereeing decisions, right? So having that in the stadium, having that, that extra little bit of response from that crowd feeds so much into what the athletes are doing. It feeds so much into, part of the entire spectator experience, whether you're there in the stadium and feeding off the person next to you, whether you're sitting, on your couch at home and watching. It's that crowd noise that's just part and parcel of watching sports, and it's just such an important part of the game. And I think we're really seeing firsthand, what a strange experience it is when that's not part of what's happening on the field.
So what it's going to be like when sports get started again, whether it's the NBA, they set a target date for July 31st, whether it's college football, whether it's the NFL. What is that going to be like for fans watching those kind of games, those action-packed, high-voltage games, and there are no fans in the stands?
And that's a great question. I mean, that's the million-dollar question right now. And we're seeing, some games in Europe, some soccer matches in Europe where they're starting to pump in fake crowd noise. And, I mean, a week ago, my question was, how good will it be? How convincing will it be? Now that I've watched and listened to a little bit of it, it's really eerie how well some of the production personnel are able to capture and recreate what you would hear in a natural environment. And of course, that's going to beg the question of, all right, are people going to buy it? Are people going to like it? Are people going to not like it? Will all networks do this, or will just some networks do this? I think it's going to be a really interesting and unprecedented experiment when the competition starts back, whether it's NBA, whether it's college football in the fall. I think we're all going to be really interested to see how networks choose to tackle that question of not having fans in the stadium.
Great stuff by Glenn Cummins, who's a Texas Tech Associate Professor of Media Communication. He has studied the effect of crowd noise on viewing sports extensively. Joining me, Freddie Coleman, on Freddie and Fitzsimmons on ESPN Radio and Sirius XM Channel 80. In your educated opinion, what sport could be affected the most by not having fans in the stands?
That's a great question. I think right now we're watching it play out in soccer, and soccer is a great sport to test the waters with, because it's one where there's not the break in competition that you would have with basketball or football, right? Those are very, highly periodized types of sports where there's a play and then there's a break, and there's a play and then there's a break. And broadcasters are very good at filling that dead time, right? They can show you a replay. They can bring on statistics, that sort of thing. With soccer, you've got a game that just keeps going, right? And so
right.
It's interesting to see that, and more importantly, to hear that spectator response as part of that. So I think that's a sport that really needs that extra swing. But the other thing I would say is that, I mean, viewers are all a little bit different, right? Some viewers are going to be a lot more cerebral and want to tune in and really take a much more analytical stance to watching the game. Some just want to watch and tune in, and we're watching sports because we want to kind of escape what's happening out there in the real world. And if broadcasters can recreate and make it a little bit more natural experience by using artificial crowd noise or by whatever tricks they decide to use, I think that's something that a lot of people are going to, it's going to appeal to them very strongly.
I get the sense that you're either or when it comes to this. If they're going to pump in crowd noise, if they're going to have fake fans just creating that kind of atmosphere when it comes to mannequins, I get the sense it doesn't bother you either way. Am I right or wrong about that? Am I reading you right? Am I reading you wrong?
I think I'm probably a little bit too analytical about the entire thing. I just think it's interesting either way, right? I mean, that's what I do is I study these things. And so I'm interested in seeing how well they can pull it off. I'm interested in – I think my gut reaction tells me that within a few minutes of watching it, people will just forget about it. They'll forget that it's artificial. They'll forget that, this may not be an actual experience where you have actual fans. They'll just be so happy to see sports back on the screen and not watching replays that I think they're going to welcome it with open arms. But you're exactly right that, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm 50-50. I'm interested in however this turns out. How about that?
Right. That works for me, and that's an honest answer from Glenn Cummins, Texas Tech Associate Professor of Media and Communication, joining me, Freddie Coleman, on Freddie and Fitzsimmons on ESPN Radio. You live in a state that loves their football, loves being passionate about their football, whether it's Texas Tech or the Dallas Cowboys. What image would you think in terms of the effect being more impactful? Is it going to be more impactful when it comes to fans that are not there for college sports or fans not being there for pro sports?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I will say that I'm a diehard college football fan. I love college football. I think there's nothing better than a college football stadium on a Saturday afternoon. So my heart tells me that, people, they come to the games because they have such strong ties to the university. But again, that may be just me projecting a little bit. I know that for me, I'm very passionate about college football. To me, professional football it's and maybe this is an artifact of I'm originally from Mississippi, so we didn't have a NFL team in Mississippi, so we just there's not a particular team that I identify with there originally. Now, having said that, I've been in Texas for a long time, and people love their Cowboys, right? So I